To the City of Troy Planning Commission meeting on October 27th, 2020. Tonight's meeting is being conducted remotely using the GoToMeeting remote meeting platform. This is due to the COVID-19 pandemic. For those watching tonight's meeting on television or on the city's YouTube channel, we welcome you. Copies of the agenda for tonight's meeting are available on the city's website. The meeting will be conducted in accordance with the agenda as presented or amended by the Planning Commission. Our first item of business after the roll call will be a proposed resolution temporarily suspending and modifying the Planning Commission bylaws and rules of procedure, which will permit us to proceed with this meeting virtually and to afford the opportunity for us to receive public comment. We have made every effort to ensure that the meeting adheres to the Act. We have provided opportunities for public comment via telephone and email prior to the meeting, and all public comment, if any, will be shared with the Planning Commission. At this time, I'd like Kathy Sarnicki to conduct the roll call, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Abhidian?
Here.
Ms. Cruz?
Here.
Mr. Faison?
Here.
Mr. Hudson?
Here.
Mr. Krent?
Here.
Mr. Lambert?
Here.
Ms. Parakis?
Here.
Mr. Rahman?
Here.
Mr. Chagel?
John, did you hear? I didn't hear your response, John.
I saw John's picture. Oh, there he is. He's back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did say here, I'm having a lot of breakup in whoever's talking. I don't know if that's coming, if everybody's hearing that or not.
No.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're fine. Thanks, John.
You're coming in loud and clear for me.
Okay, that concludes our roll call, Kathy?
Yes, it does, Mr. Chair. Everyone is present.
Very nice. Okay, the next item is this, I'm going to read the resolution to suspend the Planning Commission rules of procedure. Whereas the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services Director Robert Gordon issued the order on October 5th, 2020 under MCL 333.2253 restricting indoor gathering sizes to protect public health and safety, and whereas Public Act 228 of 2020 permits public meetings to be held by electronic means where an in-person meeting would detrimentally increase exposure of board members and the general public to COVID-19. Therefore, be it resolved that as allowed by the Planning Commission Rules of Procedure, Article 4, Section 6, the Troy Planning Commission hereby temporarily suspends the requirement of holding a meeting at the Troy City Hall and allows all Troy Planning Commission members to electronically participate in any Planning Commission meeting through December 31st, 2020. Members participating electronically will be considered present and in attendance at the meeting and may participate in the meeting as if physically present. However, members must avoid using email, texting, instant messaging, and other such electronic forms of communication to make a decision or deliberate toward a decision. Resolved as allowed by the Planning Commission bylaws and rules of procedure, Article 10, the Troy Planning Commission hereby temporarily suspends and modifies the bylaws and rules of procedure concerning the order of the agenda as set forth in Article 5, Section 3 to consolidate the public comment sections of the meeting for any meeting held through December 31st, 2020. Resolved as allowed by the Planning Commission bylaws and rules of procedure, Article 10, the Planning Commission hereby temporarily suspends and allows two methods of receiving public comment for virtual meetings. Public comments can be submitted for the Planning Commission meeting by sending an email to planning@troymi.gov emails received prior to 4 p.m. on the day of the Planning Commission meeting will be read at the meeting and made part of the public record. Public comments can also be submitted by calling the following phone number and leaving a voicemail message: 248-524-1305. Recorded voicemail messages received prior to 4 p.m. on the day of the Planning Commission meeting will be played at the meeting. For emails and recorded messages received after the deadline, reasonable efforts will be made to read the emails and play recorded messages received during the meeting. Email and voicemail public comments will be limited to 3 minutes each. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda? Not the minutes, I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Chairman, I'm sorry for interrupting, but you need to move that resolution and take a vote on it.
Oh, okay. Okay, I got it. Do we have a motion to, somebody's got a lot there. Dave, can you put your down? Thanks. I need someone to, oh, I guess Dave was going to make the motion to move the suspension of the Planning Commission bylaws. I need a motion and a second for that.
I'll second.
Did you catch that, Ms. Sarnicki?
The
It was-
motion was moved by Mr. Faison and support by Mr. Lambert. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes,
Right.
Okay, you ready for a roll call?
yes,
Okay, Ms. Cruz,
Yes.
Mr. Faison,
Yes.
Mr. Hudson,
Yes.
Mr. Krent,
yes,
Mr. Lambert,
Yes.
Ms. Parakis,
Yes.
Mr. Rahman,
Yes.
Mr. Tagle,
Yes.
Mr. Aphidian.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion for that? And a second? I guess we're gonna, does a wave, I'll ask.
I'll
Mr.
second.
Gray, Does a wave or a thumbs up account, or they have to verbally say yes over the mic?
No, it needs to be verbal, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, good. Okay. Mr. Faison,
I'll second. Yes.
Okay, I made the motion to approve the agenda, right?
okay. Ms. Parakis made the motion and Mr. Faison seconded. May we have a roll call, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Faison,
Yes.
Mr. Hudson,
Yes.
Mr. Krent,
Yes.
Mr. Lambert,
Yes.
Ms. Parakis,
Yes.
Mr. Rahman,
Yes.
Mr. Tagle,
Yes.
Mr. Aphidian,
Yes.
Ms. Cruz.
Yes.
Motion carries.
The next item is approval of the minutes of the April 28th, 2020 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
Mr. Krant, I will move the adoption of the minutes.
Thank you. And a second?
I'll second.
John Tagle?
Yes.
Roll call, please, Ms. Arnicki?
Mr. Hudson,
Yes.
Mr. Krant,
Yes?
Mr. Lambert,
Yes.
Ms. Parakis,
Yes.
Mr. Rahman,
Yes.
Mr. Tagle,
Yes.
Mr. Aphidian,
Yes.
Ms. Cruz,
Yes.
Mr. Faison.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next item on the agenda is public comment. Do we have any public comment?
There is none at this time.
Thank you. Next item is preliminary site plan review. That's file number SP 2019-0045, proposed the Westington south side of Waddles, east of Crooks, section 21, currently zoned NN neighborhood nodes I district. Is it going to be Ben or Brent?
Yeah, it's going to be myself, Mr. Chairman. Can I share my screen, Bob?
Sure.
You should be good.
Can everyone see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Ben Carlisle. I'm the planning consultant for the city of Troy, and I appreciate being back in front of you. It's been a while, but I appreciate the opportunity. Tonight before you is a proposed development called the Westington. A little background: the site is on Waddles, just east of Crooks Road. It's an approximate 3.4 acre site, and it's currently improved with 3 houses. The site is adjacent to a 7-Eleven, a medical office, and single-family residential to the west, and those parcels are all zoned neighborhood node. It's adjacent to single-family use and neighborhood node zoning to the north, single-family residential use and neighborhood node zoning to the southeast, in single-family residential use and single-family zoning to the east. The site tonight is zoned neighborhood node NN. In front of you is the site plan for the proposed development. It includes 108 units. Those 108 units are laid out in 3 buildings. Each building has 36 units in them. Access to site is via Waddles Road, and there's going to be emergency vehicle access off Bearline Road in the southern end of the site. And I'll have more discussion about that in a future slide. As required under the neighborhood node, the applicant has pulled the building 10 feet from Waddles. It's a 3-story building with it's 30 feet tall with a mansard roof. With regards to all the bulk requirements, with regards to just height and setbacks, it does comply with all the neighborhood node requirements. Parking for the site will be at grade spaces. There are 36 efficient units, which require 36 spaces. There are 72 1 or more bedroom units, which require 144 spaces. So in total, they're required 180, and they provide 192. So they have 12 additional spaces for guest parking. We required the applicant to provide a traffic study, and based on the 108 units, the applicant's traffic report estimates that a peak morning rush hour would be 39 trips. A peak afternoon rush hour would be 48 trips. In total, that would be 588 trips. When Director Saunat and I got the report, we did have some questions about whether or not those were, I wouldn't say valid, but were accurate, I would say, to existing conditions. And so we had the city's traffic engineer consultant, OHM, double check the figures, and they do agree with the finding of the traffic study and agree with these figures. In their traffic memo, you have the entire memo in your packet, but I'll just briefly summarize what their conclusion was. Their conclusion was that the traffic generated by the proposed development would be minimal and adding just a handful of trips during the peak hour. Over the last few years, the volume on Waddles Road has varied between 1,300 to 2,000 vehicles during the peak hour and 15,000 to 20,000 vehicles per day. So they are noting that the Westington adding 50 new vehicle trips during the peak hour, either PM or AM, really does not amount to a significant increase in the overall volume. So in conclusion, they do note that the traffic impacts as a result of the proposed development are minimal and not expecting to significantly worsen traffic conditions on Waddles Road or at the intersection. With regards to access and circulation, primary access or all access will be off of Waddles Road. The applicant is proposing an EAV on Bartline, which is located just to the south of the development. We note that as a requirement of the EVA, the applicant needs to provide the proper access easement because Bearline is a private road. And secondly, they need to prove to the satisfaction of the fire department that that road can accommodate the weight of a fire truck. In addition, it's in our notes that we are asking for additional sidewalk and driveway crossings to provide for better internal pedestrian circulation, and the actual points where those are located within our report. We want to note that the site does include significant tree cover as well as floodplain. They're protecting the floodplain and not encroaching on it, as well as the tree cover along the eastern property line. That provides a very natural buffer to the single family use there. In addition, as required by ordinance, they have a screening line of landscaping along the western property line. So it does comply with all landscape requirements. We do note that they're only proposing one central trash enclosure, and so we have a question to the applicant whether or not that's sufficient or if additional ones may be needed. This is a neighborhood node, and there are transition and standards that the Planning Commission should apply when considering the application. We do want to note that we have reviewed this application, I believe, at least twice at this point to get it to this point in front of the Planning Commission. We do appreciate the applicant's efforts to reduce the height from 38 feet to 30 feet. However, when reviewing it, we do note a particular concern of the massing of Building A, which is the building that fronts right on Waddles. It's a long building. It's 180 feet long with approximately 3 stories in height of 30 feet. When you compare that height and length to those in the surrounding area, you can tell that it's a much larger building than the surrounding area. 7-Eleven is a 1-story, 14 feet, and that's 50 feet at the longest side. And the medical office is 1 story, 17 feet, and it's 118 feet at the longest side. So this is a large mass of a building as compared to the surrounding buildings. And again, there's 3 of these on the site. So we do want the planning to consider those standards when they do review this. And really there's 4 standards that the Planning Commission should consider with regards to transition. The first is intensity. The second is the height and mass, especially in comparison to adjacent properties. And if there are opportunities for step backs or gradual changes that can reduce that height massing. Third is the orientation. And lastly, are there architectural features that can be used to reduce that the impact of the mass and the height and used to kind of soften that facade. So we ask the Planning Commission consider the proposed height, relation to the massing, and consider the proposed architecture if it provides an appropriate transition. With regards to the elevation, I know the applicant submitted a design statement. The applicant's architect is here and answer any question. It's a mansard roof, I believe, and I'm not an architect. It's more of a French style design. So these are the elevations. So we do note that the site is adjacent to numerous and varied uses. The eastern site is located within the 100-year floodplain and provides a natural buffer. So fundamentally, we do support the use of the property for multifamily housing and complement the applicant in providing a much-needed stacked flat product. However, we do have some questions with regards to transition, architecture, and site planning that we'd like the Planning Commission to consider. One is the relation of the height to the massing and whether or not, particularly Building A on Waddles, whether that should be broken down into two different buildings or reduced in height to 2 stories only. And whether, and then with regards to the elevation, does the French mansard architecture, it's unique, how does it fit into the complement the rest of the area, and will it stick out, especially in relation to the massing of the building? So based on that discussion, if the Planning Commission does approve the preliminary site plan, we do ask that the following requirements be added as conditions. 1, address the fire department's comments with regards to the proposed EVA. 2, provide better internal and external pedestrian connection. 3, confirm that 1 trash enclosure with 2 trash containers is sufficient. And lastly, address any architectural or material items raised by the Planning Commission. That concludes my report. Mr. Chairman, I will stop sharing my screen here if I can figure out how to do it.
Mr. Chairman, this is Brent.
Yes.
Is there any questions?
Okay.
Before we get too deep into the conversation, if there's any questions for Ben, this would be an appropriate time, but I believe the applicant wishes to make a presentation. And also Bob from IT was asking me, do you want the presentation made larger or is that big enough? To me, it was big enough, but Mr. Chair, it's your call.
It was fine from my screen, but I've got a 20-inch screen, so I don't know. It worked for me. Anybody have a problem viewing the presentation? Seeing none, we'll just move forward. Are there any questions for Ben?
Mr. Chairman, I had a question for Ben. So Ben, agree with the comments on, height and massing. And I was just looking through the packet. Are there any renderings that show this project and the surrounding homes or areas? I see renderings, but they don't seem to be scaled for the other buildings. So I don't know if I'm missing something.
I believe there are renderings. I don't know if they show them in relation to the surrounding properties. Mr. Director Salvadon, do you remember if there are any submitted in the packet?
Yeah, the petitioner submitted some drawings labeled aerial perspective. I'm looking at them now.
I'm looking at 38 and 39 in the packet, and I don't know if that's where you're looking. And I just see the project, but I don't see anything else. I see the 7-Eleven and the office building, but they look like they're almost parking lot and not, they're not the height.
Buildings look pancaked.
Right. And so I'm having difficulty putting in the context of the surrounding properties just based on these drawings that I see. So I didn't know if there was anything else.
I don't believe so, sir.
Okay.
Any other comments or questions for Ben?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Ben.
Go ahead, Mr. Appleton.
I know previous version of this project was a full 3-story height for all buildings. And I noticed that the presentation indicated 2.5/3. Is this technically considered a 2.5-story building, or is it a 3-story building? How do we look at this?
Yeah, it's a great question. Before it was a full 3-story building because it didn't have the mansard roof with the sloping roof. It really is going to be a determination of the building department because it's a function. The height is a function of a relationship between the roof pitch and the area in the third story. So by building code definition, it may be a 2.5-story, but for massing in bulk, it really appears and seems as if it's a 3-story building. That being said, the number of stories does allow for 3 stories in this district. So really, it really for planning commission consideration, it really does not matter if it's a 2.5-story or 3-story. It's the biggest consideration is the massing of the building itself.
Any other questions for Mr. Carlisle?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Okay. Go ahead, Dave.
And I don't.
Then I'll get John.
Okay. Mr. Carlisle, I was wondering if, I know it wasn't raised in your concerns, and I'm not sure if city staff raised any issues, but the entrance off of Waddles looks to me awfully close, number one, to the 7-Eleven, and number two, to the intersection with Crooks Road. And I was wondering if anybody raised concerns about the stacking that occurs on the westbound Waddles in the morning, whether that exit onto Waddles is so close as going to cause some traffic issues there.
The site plan itself was reviewed by the engineering department as well as the traffic engineer, and neither of them raised a concern about the access location.
Mr. Krantz?
Yes.
I was going to withhold some comments, but I think
John Tagle. I know, but John Tagle was.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right, I'll get in line behind John.
Yeah, go ahead, John.
That's all right. Yeah. Couple of questions. Ben, you said the building is at a 10-foot setback from the right-of-way?
Correct.
Okay. And did they submit any floor plans that would indicate that building would be able to be split into two as opposed to one building?
I believe floor plans were submitted in the packet. I can double check that, Mr. Daigle. One comment I do want to make on the setback, just to remind the planning commission, it's been a while since we've looked at a project that the 10-foot is the minimum. The planning commission can grant up to a 30-foot setback along that front property line. So The 10 is just the minimum the planning commission can approve.
Okay. All right, Mr. Hudson.
Thank you. David Lambert's segue into what I had some concerns about. Since 1985, I have traveled to my office, Coolidge to Waddles to Livernois. And the traffic is getting worse each year. But in particular, one of the problems I see is that with that 7-Eleven, if someone is going west and wants to have a cup of coffee, he blocks traffic if he can get in to sneak across that intersection. And on the way home, same thing. Going west, that left turn into 7-Eleven causes a problem. Now, I know we've got 2 travel lanes and 2 intersection lanes. But this traffic study, I'm not even sure it's taken into consideration an actual traffic study, but with COVID, there's still a lot of cars, and probably when this thing ever gets over, there's going to be more cars there. And when you consider that Waddle's a 2-lane road, the Department of Transportation probably spent $5 million putting that bridge over I-75, a 2-lane bridge. Now, when you combine that with the traffic which may be coming off of Crooks, going north and south, if we've got this condominium or apartment, is it a condominium or is it an apartment? I'm not sure, but
Apartment.
Anybody who wants to go west out of that project is going to have the same problem as we have right now with 7-Eleven. If you've got 7-Eleven and this project very close to it, it's got the potential for a hell of a big traffic jam and interfering with traffic. That's my concern. I'm not ready for a solution. I don't know what it would be, but I'm concerned about that.
But can I ask a couple points to that, Mr. Grant?
Sure.
First off, Mr. Tagle, to your point, the floor plans are on page 54 of the packet. Start on page 54. And Mr. Krant, the traffic study was completed, I believe, by the applicant at the end of 2019, and it was reviewed by the city in January of 2020. So it was pre-COVID traffic study.
Good to know. All right. That answer your questions, Mike?
I don't know if they answered the question. I'm just expressing my concerns that I think it's got a potential for a lot of problems.
Okay. Ms. Barakis.
Yeah, it was interesting for me to learn, Mr. Carlisle, about the what the Planning Commission can ask regarding the setback, because I have concerns with the fact that Waddles is considered a major arterial street, and that is defined as any street, I'm reading right out of the master plan, any street with a right-of-way width existing or proposed of 120 feet or greater. And I think people who are familiar with that intersection know that Waddles is a 2-lane road. The pictures that are on pages 38 and 39 of the presentation, which are the agenda, are really inaccurate. The aerial views, they show it looks like Telegraph Road. Waddles is a 2-lane road. Just because you're adding right at the intersection a right turn lane and a left turn lane, when you cross over Crooks, you have 1 lane in both directions to go. So if we're going to start building up these neighborhood nodes, we have to have conversations or at least be prepared to widen the roads, because there's no way we can handle this. The traffic studies I take issue with. I don't agree with them. I personally myself am one person, and I counted. I pass through that intersection 14 times a day on average. That is a busy intersection, and I already have issues with the 7-Eleven. There's a building there that's empty, that hasn't been leased yet. There's a restaurant that looks like it's about to open at that intersection, along with that dental office. So we really have to look at, the impact of developing the corner as a unit And the fact that it's not just one thing at a time, we have to prepare. We can't all to happen and then be like, oh, whoops, well, we don't have the room now to widen the road. Those are my thoughts and concerns.
Ben, is there any, the right-of-way, the allowance for the right-of-way on Waddles, is that eventually going to become a 5-lane road? You know what I'm saying, a center turn lane with 2 lanes each way, and I'm just trying to see the future. What comes next?
Not to my knowledge. And again, I'll just go back to the fact that this was reviewed by the engineering department, and they didn't raise the future right of way as an issue here. If that's something that we can confirm, but not to my knowledge, is there any plans to widen Waddles at this location?
Okay, my thought is, you know what happened on Rochester Road, where the stores on Rochester Road north of Big Beaver are so close to the road that when they widened it, it's like a sliver. And what I'm saying is, Rochester Road, it started out as a 2-lane road with a center turn lane, and it's developed into a major artery. And I'm just wondering, 20, 30, 40 years from now, will Waddles become a major artery like Big Beaver? In other words, because the traffic on Big Beaver is so heavy, the 1 mile north of it, people are going to start utilizing that decades from now, not in our lifetime maybe, but, and I'm just trying to figure out, do they allow enough right of way for Waddles for this development to be set back 10 feet?
Mr. Grant, it won't be possible. That bridge is a 2-lane bridge between Livernois and Crooks. They can't widen it.
Well, yeah, you're right. For this current bridge, yes, the new bridge, but things happen in the future. Mr. Savedon.
Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, I just checked the width of the Waddles Road at that location in front of the apartment building. It's 120-foot right-of-way. And there's a 120-foot right-of-way 1 mile to the east that accommodates 5 lanes when you include turn lanes. So there is room there for 5 lanes. Now, are there plans there not that to widen it to 5 lanes? Not that I'm aware of. And I agree with Mr. Hudson that the existence of the bridge over I-75 has been a choke point for road widening discussion. So I'm not aware of any plans, but the right of way will accommodate 5 lanes there.
Okay, I wonder if the bridge will.
I don't know. The aerial photo I have of the bridge is, I know they replaced the bridge recently, but I don't have an updated a plan or aerial photo of the bridge. I don't know. I haven't driven over in a while, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I see Ms. Paraka's hands going up. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to state for the record, I'm not in favor of widening Waddles. What I am trying to make the point of, though, is that Waddles is it is already a major arterial street as defined by the master plan, but it's sort of like a proposed, it talks about it, the proposed that we can enlarge it one day. So, we find ourselves in this situation where we're now talking about these neighborhood nodes and building them up, and whether or not that's appropriate for the area, and what really can that intersection handle. That was really my point.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Carlisle before we hear from the applicant? Well, at this point, I'd like to hear from the applicant, maybe answer some of the thoughts and questions we have. And who would that person be?
Mr. Greg Obley.
Obley? Yeah, please,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, good evening. My name's Greg Obley. I'm here on behalf of the Westington, and we thank you tremendously for holding this remote meeting tonight. This site plan was submitted last December. It was scheduled to be up before this commission in the end of February. Prior to that meeting, we received a review letter from Carlisle Wortman had a handful of comments on it, and being respectful of the planning commission's time, we decided not to go forward with the project. We addressed Carlisle Wortman's comments, and we resubmitted it the very first week of March, and got rescheduled for the middle of April. And unfortunately, we know what happened then. So here we are. We're excited. And to be here, we do have, I think Ben Carlisle did a good job presenting the site plan as to what it is, so I won't regurgitate that. We do have a compliant site plan. It's a permitted use, requires no variances. And with that, also here is Peter Stuhlreier of Design House. He's the architect for the project. We also have Jim Butler from PEA, as well as Arvin and Sam Staffa to address any questions that you have. We do believe we will comply with the fire department's comments on the emergency access. We will include better internal and external pedestrian connections as requested by Ben Carlisle. And we also believe that the one trash enclosure is adequate for a project of this site. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Peter, who can, address the architectural issues raised by this commission and Ben. Thank you.
Go ahead, Peter.
Thanks, Greg. Thank you, Greg. Thanks, Ben. Well said. My name is Peter Stuhlreier with Design House Architecture. I am the project architect for the Westington. I'm joined tonight with obviously the development group and the civil engineer and landscape architects. If any questions come up concerning those issues, then we're here to answer anything you want. I just want to touch on a couple of points that were raised by the commissioners, and thank you for having us here this evening. Well, having us in virtual space this evening anyway. The issue about the setback in the right-of-way, and I think Brent said it well, we're not 10 feet away from the street. We're 50 feet away from the curb. So, and eventually I'd probably want to share my screen when we get to a point where we want to show some of these contextual pictures that we have. But there's more than enough room, as Brent said, to widen the road, change the intersections, and so on and so forth as the nodes develop. And as Ben said, we do have a compliant site plan and aren't looking for a lot of, relief or any relief. But the question came up about massing, and I would like to talk about that as the designer. I think it was brought up also that this used to be a 3-story, more contemporary building that had far bigger massing. In February, we received a letter from the city commenting on this, and I took it on to redesign the facade based on that commentary, and I did choose the mansard style. I know there was a comment somewhere inside of it all that said that it was not common to the area. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think you'd have to define area. You don't have to go very far outside of Troy or maybe even inside Troy to find commercial and residential buildings and mixed-use buildings. They're all mansard. It is probably the best transitional style in our quiver, as it were. So what it does is it reduces the massing, it reduces the scale, it relates back to single family, but it also has some relationship to being along a street edge or an active streetscape or an urban edge or whatever you want to call it. So it fits both contexts and then transitions as you go down the street or behind the lot into single family pretty seamlessly. And this one does just that. There is an image from 7-Eleven, and if I could share my screen, I don't know if that's possible, to show this one image that I'm looking at that kind of demonstrates that splitting the building is not a really relevant factor because you can only approach the building from an acute angle. You can't approach it from head on an axial angle or an axial straight on approach. So what we've done is broken the building into 4 distinct masses with some vertical elements. And I'd like to, if I ask to share, I don't know if it'll happen.
Bob Lowe, is that can he share his screen?
Yeah.
He should be able to.
Got it. Here comes. Maybe. Come on. There we go. So if you can see that image, this is the approach from 7-Eleven towards the building.
Mm-hmm.
And it clearly depicts separated massing because of the mansard style. It also shows cut in and pushed out dormers, lowers the eave line to the second floor. So it will go into building code and probably zoning code as a 3-story building, but it is definitely has the massing of a 2-story building and actually several 2-story buildings as you approach. So, you know, with the material changes between brick and limestone and siding, standing seam roofing and dormers, I think we've addressed the ability to reduce the massing of this building. And I think there's something worth noting about the massing and the building floor plan typology is that we're providing 33% of our units as ground floor walk-in single level units, barrier-free units. That's different than the townhouse style that's prevalent in Troy. So in the townhouse style, you've got a couple of flights of stairs to get in and out of the different living spaces and sleeping spaces and garages. This is not the same thing. 30% of these walk in on the grade and can provide a diverse selection, as it were, of housing opportunities for Troy. It's not the most common layout in the city, but this would definitely be welcome as one of the products. I think the mansard roof also gave us an upscale feel from the original design, which is another thing that we are going for. So it's important to note. And I don't know if I have any other notes to talk about other than to, offer to answer questions if there are any from the commission.
Okay, with that, do we have any questions for Mr. Stuhlreier? Oh, could we reduce that picture? I think it's so much data that I think we're getting a delay in voice and.
Yeah, I can stop sharing thing. I don't know if the I'm not sure how to stop sharing.
Oh, maybe Bob can help you with that.
Mr. Chairman?
You should be able to press on that same screen icon and it should turn it off.
I have a quick question when the picture is still there. Can I ask?
Go ahead, Mr. Rahman.
Yes. This is obviously not a picture because the building doesn't exist. Is it drawn to the scale, or is it like intentionally those building was shown smaller?
No, that's as close as we can get in virtual reality to scale. We think that's accurate.
So it's not drawn to scale, right? Yes or no?
The drawing on the screen is to scale.
I have a question, Mr. Krent.
Go ahead.
This is Mariana Practice. I'm sorry, I can't see a lot of you because of the way the screen's set up right now, but I something's not adding up for me, and maybe I'm not sure if Mr. Savadant can answer this, but oh, there we go. Well, now the picture's gone, but what's not adding up for me is that they said that the building is 50 feet from Waddles, yet it's in line with the 7-Eleven. And I can almost guarantee with 99% certainty that the 7-Eleven is not set back 50 feet. And I was wondering if you could confirm that. I mean, I would guess that it's 10 to 15 feet setback from Waddles. So 50, it seems to me that that building would practically be behind the parking lot of 7-Eleven. So I'm just, something just isn't adding up. I can't seem to reconcile it.
So it's important to recognize the difference between road width and right-of-way width. So the paved section of road is located within the 120-foot right-of-way. The building is required to be set back, built to 10 feet from the right-of-way line. The sidewalk is within the right-of-way, and there's a significant amount of grass between the sidewalk and the paved section of road. So it helps if you look. It helps if you look at the aerial photograph. You can see what I'm talking about. So the right-of-way where that area that's owned by the city that the road goes within is 120 feet in width. And I want to add one more thing, only because we are on the topic, and I texted the city engineer during the conversation to confirm the new bridge over Waddles is the paved section of road over the bridge today is 2 lanes, but it was constructed to accommodate 4 lanes, just for the record.
Good, thanks.
But I'm sorry, but I'm still not clear. I mean, I don't know that I followed. Wasn't it said that the building, the Westinghouse, is 50 feet? I mean, what was the 50 feet figure? The 50 feet from what?
I believe Mr. Stuhlweiler was saying that the building placement will be 50 feet from the paved section of road. So when you factor in the area in the right-of-way that's grass and sidewalk, plus the 10-foot setback of the building, it will be 50 feet from the road, not the right-of-way, but the paved road.
Correct. Okay, so then I guess that's what I'm asking. The image shows it in line with the 7-Eleven, right? I mean, they were right in line, right? I mean, the buildings were right along the line. Are you able to confirm that 7-Eleven is 50 feet back from Waddles?
Yes, yes, I can confirm that the same right-of-way issues are the same for 7-Eleven as they are for this development. The 7-Eleven is, I can't say it's 50 feet per se, but it is significantly set back from Waddles Road.
Wow, okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask one question?
Sure.
So I know Mr. Stuhlweiler is he's a registered architect with Design House. He's the designer of the building. But Mr. Obloy, who spoke and introduced the project, I think for the record, we should know what role he plays in this project, what firm he's with. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm an attorney, and I work with the law firm of Carson Fisher in Bloomfield Hills, Michigan.
Okay, Michael.
I wanted to comment on the Mansard roof. I think that's a great design. It takes away from the cookie cutter 3-story blocks that we've been seeing with multifamily development. I think that's classy. And if it's down to about 2.5 feet, that makes me even a little more in line with the transitional part of it. It's one of the first we've seen, and I think it's a great thing.
Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts for the applicant?
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Dave.
For the petitioners, are there any reasons why that building could not be moved farther west so that the access on Waddles could be moved farther away from the Crooks Road intersection?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I'm not sure I understand the question. I don't see why the entry couldn't be on the other side of the building if it had to be, but I don't know what the benefit to that would be.
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Jim Butler with PEA Group. There is a floodplain on the east side of that site. That's going to present some challenges if we flip that drive over there.
Okay. Looks like a pathway is already there, though. Any response to that, Mr. Butler?
A pathway.
Yeah. There's
that's shifted. Yeah, that's shifted into the road right of way in that location.
Okay, so you're saying the ground isn't stable enough to put a high volume traffic driveway there?
Well, there's an existing floodway. We'd have to stay outside the floodway boundary. There is some grade challenges there. We are building a retaining wall in that location. So there are some challenges related to grade and floodplain.
Okay.
Mr. Butler, do you have a camera that you can share this evening?
There he is.
Sorry, Kathy, I apologize.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
I thought I had it on. I apologize.
Any other comments, Ms. Parakis?
Yeah, I mean, back to what was just brought up by, I believe, Mr. Lambert. Have you ever given consideration to not just flipping the drive to the other side of the building, but shifting the building towards the 7-Eleven and then moving the drive away from Waddles so it wasn't so close to the intersection and also the drive of 7-Eleven. When traffic is heading east on Waddles, it is a single lane road. And so if people there's no right turn lane into the Westinghouse near the 7-Eleven. So whenever cars go in, it stops that flow on a 40-mile-per-hour road pretty abruptly. And so this is just going to exacerbate that already existing problem. So it would make a difference for the people who live in that area traveling through that intersection if the drive were not so close to the intersection. So would that be possible to shift the building back and flip it with the drive?
Anyone can answer from the applicant on that one.
On the architect side, I think we were trying to avoid traffic and headlights closer to the single family areas. But I don't know on the traffic and the engineering side, it might be.
Well, like I said, there are some grade challenges. There's floodplain in there. We would have to look at that a little further to see what impact that might be.
Okay, but I tend to agree with Ms. Parakis that putting a driveway further away from the Crooks Road intersection would be preferable as far as the traffic congestion. So I don't know if we can make that a fixed thing. You're going to have to do some studies on that. But I would agree with the comments from Mr. Lambert and Ms. Parakis that it'll be nice to see that the building facing Waddles moved more to the west, and the main drive routed on the east side of that A building. I guess it's called letter A. So that's my thought on that. Any other thoughts before we take it back to the commission? Go ahead, Ms. Parakis again.
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about the floor plans and the square footages. From what I saw, they were pretty tiny apartments. And I know you guys talked about accommodating seniors and having this be something to accommodate seniors, which is lacking in Troy. That would limit the seniors pretty much to those first floor apartments. So I'm most curious about them. What are these dimensions of those first floor apartments?
Again, anyone from the applicant can answer those, please.
So the first floor has similar unit mix to the floors above. So they basically stack. So there's a variety of 2 beds, 1 beds, and studios on the first floors.
Can you please provide the square footages?
Oh, you know what? Yeah. Let me see if I can zoom into my site plan. So there are 4 2 beds that are 870 square feet. there are two beds that are 830. There's two one beds that are 651, and there are 4 efficiencies at 525.
Okay. Any other questions? Well, I'm going to, before I give it back to the commission to ponder, I just wanted to put my quick comment. I'll follow with Mr. Hudson about the mansard style. I think it does help transition, lowering the visual. It makes it look more like a 2-story building, even though it's 3. And we do have an example of mansard roofs right off of, at the Somerset Park Apartments. I mean, there's a whole section that was developed with mansard roofs there. It's not uncommon to Troy. I'm sure there's probably other examples in the city too, but that's one that's most familiar to me. So I tend to agree with Mr. Hudson on the architecture itself. I think it's an excellent solution for visually bringing down the height of that building, the mass. I would like to see it separated into 2 parts, but I understand what the architect has done is basically taken that design and made it in 3 places, that same design. It's nice from an architectural point of view to have them all similar in layout, but it would be nice to see, as Mr. Tagle talked about earlier, to separate the 2 on wattles, unless there's some incredible reason why you have to have. I know the chimneys, there's that nice French chimney. I like that whole thing. I kind of get that, but I'm just wondering if the architect couldn't come up with a design that separates the 2 buildings, but still keeps the same character of that building. I think it would be just, again, helping the transition to look more residential and less, 180 feet, that's 2/3 of a football field. That's a big chunk of building. I don't mind it behind the offices, and I guess there's that one house there. But I just thought on wattles, it would be nice to see a little softer look by separating that, the mass, basically. What do you say, Mr. Stuhlreier?
Well, I think that if I separate the buildings and try to maintain some density, that I'd separate them by probably 10 or 15 feet. And I think driving 40 miles an hour on Wattles Road, you wouldn't know the difference. That's my honest opinion.
Sure,
but
I can understand
whether
that.
they were separated or attached. And our landscape design provides tremendous amount more mature trees and caliper inches than is required, and a good deal of that is in the front of that building. So it's good money after bad. It's making a move, but I don't think that we get a benefit out of it. Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong, Tom. I get paid more for 2 more independent buildings standing there. So it's in my benefit to draw more buildings. And I think that to the developer's benefit to have 3 of the same building that keep the pro forma in check.
Sure. No, I can understand that. I can understand the viewing angle from people driving on Wattles is they wouldn't see that separation by much at all. I can agree with that. Mr. Rahman.
Can I add something to your point? Okay. So yes, the people who are driving probably will not see the difference, but people who will be walking will see the difference. That's number 1. Number 2 is obviously the massing to height ratio is really, really large. So I would request, have 2 different buildings so that it's a transition. It's not like a big mass, a big massing. And then also, I kind of feel like, it doesn't give the residential look. I mean, I compared, it looks like a barrack type look, when I'm looking at that. So I was wondering, if we can just consider that, make these two buildings separate, this building separate with some, distance in between.
Okay. Anyone else? Oh, who's Buzz that I didn't, Buzz, is it Foresi?
I'm a consultant on the Troy, Regency of Troy project next.
Okay. Could you mute your mic?
Yeah, it's been muted.
Oh, it shows live on my, okay. On Buzz?
Yeah, I'm on twice. I have my phone for audio and the videos on my computer without a mic.
Okay. I was just getting a little feedback for a while. I'm just wondering who it was, but thank you. All right. Any other comments before we bring it back to the commission? Any
I'd also like to add one more thing, Mr. Ken.
Go ahead.
Okay, so you know that neighborhood node has a requirement, like it has to be a village type look, and I have that kind of feeling. That was the main criteria for building this neighborhood node. Now I understand there will be like 108 units here. Is that right? Is that? Sorry. So how much open space we will have in this area? Can I have a top view of this place?
Do you have any, what do you want to know? How much open space?
Open space top view, because my concern is like there will be families, there will be kids living in this community, right, that we are building. So is there any a wiggle room, breathing space, or we're just dumping a bunch of people in like a small couple of acres? So that's my concern. It's too intense.
Ben would be the person to answer. Does it meet the open space requirements?
Because we don't want the kids to go to the neighbor's backyard, right?
It meets to answer your question, it meets the open space requirements, meets the landscaping requirements. The area where most of the open space and landscaping is actually within the floodplain area. So they've got a trail through there. There's maybe a few other amenities in there, but that's where the primary location of the quote unquote open space or landscapes area.
Okay. So it meets all the requirements, right?
It meets the requirements with regards to the minimum amount of area of landscaping. Yes.
And this useful area, I mean, is that something that we can just use it with, like kids can play or something, or just some wooded area? It's not maintained.
It's in the floodplain. There are things that you can do within a floodplain. I mean, for example, I believe they could put in a play structure or something of that nature. There can't be anything of any size or substance because of the location of the floodplain. But again, I would defer to the applicant about what they actually plan to do within that area. I think I see in one of their plans they do have some amenities in that area, including a play structure. Let me see here, a play structure. A covered pavilion and a grilled area.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So are we ready to bring it back to the commission?
I have another question, actually. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I mean, I'll comment first that, we're talking about the kids playing. I'm not sure if it's really geared towards kids when we're talking about 500 square foot apartments, but that's another question that we can discuss later. But I did want to ask the question to the applicant. In the agenda, stated a couple of times, particularly on page 42, that you obtained much feedback from the community. And I was just wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that.
And who would like to do that from the applicant?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi. Oh, it was just watching other planning commission meetings and just on social media, just seeing the demand and some feedback. Or yeah, so that's kind of how.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay,
for
so
the
you didn't
record,
actually-
can we have Mr. Staffa introduce himself and indicate his role in the project, please?
Hi. Yes. My name is Arvind Staffa, and I work with the developer.
Okay, so there were no formal meetings or anything
No.
like that with the public? Okay, just wanted to
No,
check.
It's
Didn't know what
just from other planning commission meetings and social media and things like that nature. Yeah. Thank you.
Any further discussion on this project? I have one, and that's regarding the emergency vehicle access and the road. It's forgot the name of it right now. Is it
Barrel Lane.
Barrel Lane? Yeah, thank you. The Barrel Lane is that going to be improved to hold the weight of that 60,000-pound ladder truck, or who's responsible for that, and what's going to happen as far as from the developer?
My understanding is.
Oh, okay. On behalf of the city, it's a private road. They would, if based on determination of an engineering review, if it's determined that the weight of the fire truck can't be supported by the existing road, the applicant, the developer, and the applicant will be responsible to improve it to support that weight of the fire truck. So it's solely on the applicant to make those improvements.
Okay, and that'll be handled through the city offices on that.
It would be a review as part of the final. If this moves forward, it'd be a review of the final site plan and final engineering.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, or should we go right to a resolution at this point?
Mr. Crane, I just wanted to state for the record, we did receive 2 emails before this meeting was placed on an agenda. One was dated October 15th from Daniel Papp at 850 Berry Lane. He expressed some opposition to the project. Some of it related to Berry Lane Road, and we had another email from February 24th, 2020 from Ashit Shah of 4088 Parkstone Court. These were not read into the record because they were included in the Planning Commission packet, and the Planning Commission had time to look at these emails and read them. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Faison.
So, I actually had a question on one of the emails, and the gentleman who expressed some opposition to using Barrel Lane as an EVA. I was curious as to what the process is. Does that individual have to consent, or does the city or engineering have the ability to require that? How does that EVA approval process work on a private road?
The applicant will have to demonstrate prior to final approval that they have the authority to utilize that Berry Lane private road for the purposes of EVA or emergency vehicle access. So that's going to be on the applicant to demonstrate that it can. First of all, they have the legal authority to use it, and second of all, that it can support the weight of fire apparatus.
Okay, and the legal authority comes from that gentleman who sent the email?
Well, it may or may not. It's gonna have to be the applicant's team that proves to the city that they have the legal right to utilize it. And we do that for final approval. We do similar. This type of thing is very common for applications like this. The first step is preliminary site plan approval, and then these type of details are figured out prior to final.
Mr. Epihedian.
I think the issue is the city has no jurisdiction over Berry Lane. The city, it's a private drive. So there'd have to be a private agreement between the developer and Mr. Papp or whoever the owner of that private drive is. So the city stays out of that completely, except the developer needs that emergency access.
Mr. Epihedian.
Got it. Thank you, Mr. Frank.
So just a follow-up question to that, because the road is private, does that mean that even any kind of maintenance on that road needs to be between the residents of that road and the developer? Does there need to be an agreement kind of for any kind of future maintenance? Is that outside the scope of what we're reviewing here? I guess that's my question. Maybe.
It's a private agreement. The city would not. The city wants to make sure that it's maintained, but the city doesn't have any jurisdiction over the road.
Mr. Hudson.
If no agreement can be made with the owner of that private road, what does that do to this project?
Sorry, go ahead. No, you go.
The fire department has determined that emergency vehicle access is required to provide a second point of ingress for emergency vehicles. If the EVA is removed, they would have to come up with an alternative to provide 2 points of emergency access into the site to the satisfaction of the Troy Fire Department. This is what's been proposed for the Planning Commission, and if there's significant change, if it were to get approved tonight, and if there's a modification that's deemed significant, they'd have to come back to the Planning Commission for approval.
All right, so they have to find a secondary source if permission couldn't be granted.
Correct.
And if permission was not granted, would that kill the project?
Potentially. My guess would be that they would try to be very creative in coming up with a second point of access.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Apadian.
I just wanted to make one comment going back to the initial conversation we had about the actual traffic and peak traffic coming out of this development, potentially onto Waddles Road. I think we've had this conversation on previous projects so many times, and we've deferred to our city engineer, we've deferred to our consultant OHM, who actually provides or confirms a traffic study as being adequate for the project. And I have no doubt that the city engineer has reviewed this project, and OHM has provided adequate information and oversight over the data that has been provided. That I trust that information, and I'm comfortable with that traffic study that 50 additional vehicles during peak hour is what's going on to Waddles Road, and that's insignificant compared to what's there. And I guess one additional question for Mr. Carlisle, is it really in our purview to approve or not approve a project based on any kind of future widening of a road that might or might not happen 20, 30 years from now? I mean, is that something that we need to take into consideration?
Yes. If there's a perceived chance that we think the road will be widened, that would require that building would be in violation, then yes, that's something that we should definitely be under the purview and review of the Planning Commission. That said, that's not the case in this particular instance. There's enough right of way that if the road were widened, the building would still be in compliant. We wouldn't be liable to have to remove and pay for compensation for the building. So to answer your question, yes, it's certainly within the purview, and it should be reviewed by the Planning Commission, but it's not applicable in this particular case.
Anyone else? If not, do we want to have, would someone propose a resolution? We've got a proposed one in our packet. What brave soul wants to read either that proposed resolution or come up with their own?
Does that mean that there's no further discussion?
Well, yeah.
So Mr.
Yeah,
Mr. Chairman, I had maybe a comment.
I haven't heard of anyone else. I've asked a few times. Any other comments before we bring it back and come to a resolution? Go ahead, Mr. Faison. You have a comment to make?
Yeah, I wanted to make a comment amongst the Planning Commission. And with the point to the resolution, I wasn't sure that we had come to a consensus, but maybe we don't have to before we vote, and maybe that drives a consensus. But I was just going to make the comment I was going to make is I agree with Ms. Parakis, Mr. Hudson, Mr. Lambert on the comment, and I think even you, not even you, and you, about the comment of evaluating moving the building on Waddles to the west and making the access point on the east side, so further away from the corner.
Okay. Anyone else that'd like to comment on moving the building? John Tagle.
That was the.
Yeah, a couple of things. I agree with the placement of the drives. I feel that they're too close. I've been on Waddles at peak hours, and that left turn lane does stack up. There is a potential for accidents there. So I agree with looking at the lake, moving that drive to the east side. With regard to the architecture and the massing, I don't have any problem with. I don't agree that the answered roof and the dormers have really diminished massing of this building. This big building, and it's going to appear to be a big building. It's a flat top, or whether the mansard kicks back 2 degrees. I don't think that's going to make a bit of difference. However, saying that, I don't have a problem with the size of the building on Waddles. It's framing the street. It's framing the south edge of our node there. So I'm okay with that. But I do not think that the drive position is in good interest for safety at that intersection.
Thank you. Anyone else to talk about how do we feel generally about moving that drive? I realize the project engineer said it would be difficult, but difficult doesn't mean it can't be done. So any consensus on having the drive further away from Crooks Road?
You didn't see my hand, but I'm going to ask anyway, Mr. Krantz.
Tom, how would you like to get consensus, Tom?
I agree with Mr. Tagle. I'd like to see that drive moved.
Okay, we've got two. I'm one. We've got Hudson, Tagle, Parakis, Trent.
Yes.
Lambert, Rahman.
Faison.
Faison. Okay, so it looks like, and Karen. Cruz, a vote with Cruz. Okay, so it looks like the majority would like to see that building moved and the driveway moved further east on the east side of that building, just to, again, keep it away from the Crooks Road intersection. Would the proposer of, the resolution being proposed include that? Would anybody like to take a stab at adding that to the proposed resolution? Ms. Parakis.
Well, I'm not gonna take a stab at that. I actually just wanted to make another comment. I'm still not really there yet on this project. Reading from the master plan, the vision for this corner, for this particular neighborhood node, is that it should be low impact and provide a high benefit to the neighborhood using the least amount of land. Compact, walkable, mixed-use development with a combination of uses serving the immediate surroundings would be an ideal fit. Integrated compact development, which would allow a user to park once and meet several daily needs, would be a positive contribution to the node. So instead, we have 108 units being pretty much crammed into 3 acres. I think it's too intense for this area, and it doesn't really serve the surrounding community.
Very good. Anyone else? Yeah, following the master plan, I agree with her. I don't think this meets all those requirements of what a neighborhood node should be.
Yeah, and I agree with that because I think it's too intense.
I'm not prepared to go forward with a resolution at this point.
Okay. Anyone else?
One more point. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Mr. Rahman.
No, I was going to ask, is there any regulation that we have that what should be the minimum size of an apartment in the city?
No, evidently
No,
not.
we're not.
So I can make a 200 square feet apartment and I can rent it out?
As long as you satisfy the building codes, the Michigan building code, you could,
Because
yes.
I know that I see the tendency, and I think we need to look at from a high distance and then see is this really a good idea to start, because I know that soon you will see a lot of these coming toward Troy, and it's not going to be just tall buildings, but also too intense building. It's my concern. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Faison.
I just had maybe a question on the discussion of that this is not meeting the purpose of the neighborhood node. And because it's an issue that's come up before. And the node is bigger than this project, right? So are we expecting this project to have all the aspects that the master plan says are required in a neighborhood node? Or alternatively, should it have some of those aspects and be part of a larger neighborhood node, which obviously this is zoned to be larger than just this project? So I don't know, Mr. Credit, if you had an opinion on that, or maybe Brent or Ben.
Ben's got his mic on, and so does Mr. Apahidian. Ben, do you have an answer for Mr. Faison?
I mean, I'll defer to Mr. Apahidian, and I can follow up if necessary.
Okay, go ahead.
I have a follow-up comment to Mr. Faison as well, because I think if we would put 7-Eleven under the microscope and the dental office as well, I don't think it would meet the standards of the ideal project under this neighborhood node either. So we haven't gotten the perfect project yet. So for us to put a different standard on this project than we have on the projects that we've already approved that came before us, I don't think that's the way to approach the review of this project, to say we're still waiting for a different project to come before us and for somebody else to bring something else, because we've already approved 2 projects that they weren't the perfect projects that met the requirements of the ultimately the goals of the master plan for this node. So just that's kind of my thought as a follow-up to Mr. Faison.
Okay.
Go ahead, Ben. The only thing I would add to that is I think if the planning commission takes so a node, to Mr. Faison's point, is not just a site, it's an area. It's multiple parcels that make up a node. It would be short-sighted, and I'm not sure any project would ever get approved if the planning commission took the narrow approach that every single parcel on its own needs to meet all those listed requirements in the master plan description. I think what the point is reviewing this project in light of what the nodes are trying to achieve, in light of what's already there. Does this project add to the existing fabric of the node and expand upon opportunities? And I think adding apartments to this node starts to build out what the intent was in the nodes about a mix of uses in totality. So you've got 7-Eleven, you've got a medical building, you've got a potential restaurant, you've now got a potential apartment complex. And so totality, I think if you look at that in whole, this development does add to the fabric of what the intent is of the nodes. It would be narrow-sighted. In fact, it would be potentially arbitrary if we were simply to look that every parcel had to have all the elements of the node, because then nothing really would fit the master plan to be built. So the node is intended to look at a larger context of the area, which includes multiple parcels within that area.
Okay. Yeah, I see Mr. Hudson's got his hand up.
Thank you. In relation to the comments, we've got a dental office and maybe a restaurant going in with a fast 7-Eleven. I don't know how you describe it, but we're talking a huge project next to the 7-Eleven. And lest we all forget, as we're taking a look at the nodes and what its purpose is, the applicant has still got in the wings another project very similar on the northwest corner of this intersection. So what we've got is a area-free zone on the northeast section, which is Whitechapel Cemetery. Take them out of the picture right now. So if we're looking to do these things that the node suggests we want to do, it's sort of a mixed use. The only mixed use we've got so far is a 7-Eleven and a dentist and a huge apartment project, probably two sides of that intersection with nothing in between, which is going to make the amenities of a neighborhood node agreeable. So I think that we've got to take it into totality. Not every project has to meet all these items, but certainly these two huge potential apartment projects take it out of the picture. So I think there's a real problem.
Ms. Barakis.
I agree with Mr. Hudson, but I also want to add that the fact alone that on a intersection like this, that we had virtually, well, I'll just say very little public comment is also a little bit troubling. I know we don't have to, we don't have to hear from the public, but it would be very helpful, I think, to the planning commissioners to get a feel for what the community wants to see with their neighborhood nodes. And being the first meeting after whatever it's been, a 6-7 month hiatus, I don't know that it's appropriate to make a decision without having, the community weigh in a little bit to help advise us too on what these neighborhood nodes should be taking shape and looking like. It's helpful to me as a commissioner to make these decisions as well.
I see Mr. Faison's mic went on. You have something to say? I guess not. Okay.
No, my mic went on, but I don't have anything to say.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Apidian.
Just one additional comment I wanted to make. I think it's important to keep things into perspective. This project alone is probably only 10 to 15% of the entire node, and so the other three corners have not been developed at all. So this is just one project that's coming for us. There's a lot more potential for this node to develop and to fulfill the goal and the mission of what we're trying to accomplish with this node alone. So just wanted to.
Okay. Mr. Sabaton.
So some of us were on the planning commission or worked in the planning department in 2008 when we came up with this neighborhood node concept. And it was based on a villaging concept that was identified in 2006 when we did a huge public visioning process and engaged the community. Mr. Lambert's nodding his head very subtly. He remembers it. So the node was a carryover from 2006. And I think when we came up with the node concept in 2008, we were, in a perfect world, we were envisioning that we'd have these mixed-use projects that were multi-story buildings with commercial on the first floor and residential above, or a project like this where we had commercial on the frontage and residential behind. And that was kind of the goal. But the market reality is these things are very, you just don't see these very often in suburban communities, unfortunately. And we've encouraged the development community to pursue these types of projects, but the market reality is you just don't get them. So consequently, we've taken an approach that was very eloquently described by Mr. Carlisle, where we treat the node in its entirety as kind of a project, and we hope that it evolves over time with a commercial component and a residential component that together accomplishes the mixed use direction that we're hoping for. So that's what we hope to achieve with the nodes. And we get that on a parcel by parcel basis, hopefully. That's the goal. So we had, on this corner, we had the initial investment with 7-Eleven on the corner. We had the office developed south of it. There's a house, that's to the south of that that's going to evolve into something more intense along the frontage. And then we get 108 apartment units behind. And in totality, that creates the walkable mixed use development that we're hoping for. And then that, as the rest of the node gets developed together, becomes a mixed-use node. In terms of the intensity, the master plan does not speak to intensity, but it does speak to walkability, and you can't get walkability without intensity. It comes part and parcel. If you really truly want to achieve walkability, we have to reduce the impact of parking lots, and to do that, you get mixed use buildings like this. I'm hearing some think that 108 units on 3 point whatever acres is too much. The zoning ordinance does not speak to that. It does not regulate that. What it does is it talks about compatibility, and it talks about transition and things like that. That's how we ensure that it's not too intense and is appropriate for that site. But I understand the reading of the verbiage of Note H from the master plan, but I think that the way that we've interpreted that over the last 12 years is that this is consistent with the master plan. Thank you.
Okay, so where do we stand, group?
Well,
Mr. Chairman.
All right, go ahead, Ms.
Just in response to Mr. Savidan, I mean, in terms of market reality that you're referring to, I guess the concern is we talk about a problem in Troy that seniors have no place to go because they want to downsize and don't have a place. And then this project is, excuse me, that's mine. Sorry. Sorry about that. I had to stop that. But, this project is basically apartments that are between 500 and 800 square feet, which I'm not really even fits that bill. And so, we're talking about what the market wants. Have studies been done to show that this is what is needed here? These are concerns that I have.
Okay, Mr. Lampo, go ahead, Brent. You want to answer that one?
Well, I guess maybe I'll answer it when I try, when I respond. You'll notice the last item on the agenda this evening is a proposal for an updated master plan. You remember the joint meeting we had with City Council in April, where we talked about a master plan, and basically one of the biggest issues facing that the Planning Commission and City Council believes are the biggest issues right now is the issue of transition as related to development law along Big Beaver, and especially in the nodes. So we're gonna look at issues like height and intensity and et cetera for the nodes. We're proposing to look at every single node and make a determination. Is this what we are looking for each of these particular nodes moving forward? That's going to be part of a master plan process that we're asking the Planning Commission this evening to look at the proposal put together and see if that's the direction we want to go in. So we will be addressing this in the near future. In the meantime, we have this application that's before us this evening that was submitted at the end of 2019. That again, I'm not going to reiterate what I said, but we believe meets the mixed use criteria of the master plan for reasons that were explained by myself and Mr. Carlisle.
Yes, I was wondering, based upon, it seems like there's a lack of consensus by the commission, if it would be appropriate to postpone action on this and consider some of the reasons that were raised by members of the commission and also some of the concerns raised in Mr. Carlisle's report.
Anyone want to follow up on Mr. Lambert's comment? Mr. Hudson.
I agree with Mr. Lambert. I think that perhaps adjourning this to give them some more time to study it would be appropriate.
This is at the commission's right now, Mr. Staffa. We brought it back to the commission. Thank you for trying. Yes, go ahead, Mr. Savidan.
What specific information would you be postponing this item for?
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Dave.
Just taking into account the comments by members of the commission, postponing for concerns about the density and massing of the building on Waddles Road, and also concerns about the access point on Waddles, moving it farther to the east.
Okay. Anyone else?
I would just also add the cumulative impact of the traffic. I think Mr. Apahidian had mentioned that this is just a small percentage of the neighborhood node, which could be correct, but that's more of a reason to take seriously the traffic implications and their cumulative effect, because, 50 cars here, 50 cars there becomes a nightmare.
Okay. Mr. Savedant.
I'm still confused by what action you're expecting the applicant to take with that type of resolution. Are you suggesting that the applicant consider reducing the number? I'm confused.
You want to answer that, Mr. Lambert or Mr. Hudson?
Yeah, I think that they ought to take a look at moving the entrance off of Waddles, splitting it into two buildings, and giving it some thought. Yeah. I think that if we're to take a vote right now, there would not be approval of the site plan. Why not adjourn it for a while to give the applicant a little more time to respond to what we did?
Any other thoughts?
I think whatever is mentioned in Mr. Carlisle's report, we should use that. There we see the same thing that Mr. Hassan was saying. The massing part, intensity, and obviously, moving the driveway. So these are the three things mainly, I would say. And then can we make the building at the Waddles 2-story instead of 3-story or 2.5-story, so that we have a good transition? I think that was also mentioned, right? Somewhere, Mr. Carlisle, can you confirm that?
It was one of my questions for the planning commission to consider about with relation
and
to
I agree with you that this is something that would make this nicer, because I don't want to use the word again, but it to me, I compared with the barrack and it looks same. Maybe the way I compared, but it didn't look like a residential building.
Ms. Cruz. Yes, your mic's on, so I thought you might want to say something. Oh, we don't hear you. Your mic's on, but oh, there you go. Now it's off. You have any comment, Karen? Okay. Unfortunately, her sound is not coming across, even with her mic on.
Can you hear me now?
There you go. Yes.
Oh, okay. I think I feel a little bit differently than a lot of my fellow planning commissioners. I always give a lot of weight to what Ben puts in his reports, what I understand about, the master plan and what we want with our nodes. Read the reports, familiar with the intersection. I'm in 7-Eleven, trust me, more often than I probably should be. To me, it meets all the requirements that we're looking for, again, in that totality framework, not necessarily each individual project. I could go to a vote, but okay. I'm not, going to hold my other commissioners hostage because they have concerns and issues and
okay.
want them resolved before they vote.
Thank you. All right, are we ready for a resolution of some kind? We need a resolution. Who's brave enough to put their thoughts into words? Go ahead, Mr. Lambert.
I'll give it a shot here. Resolved that preliminary site plan approval pursuant to Article 8 of the zoning ordinance as requested for the proposed Westington apartment project located on the south side of Wilds, east of Crooks, parcel 88-20-21-101-004, 005, and 008, Section 21, zoned Neighborhood Node I, be postponed for the following reasons. Number one, to address the location of the access on Waddles Road farther to the east, to address concerns about the massing of the building that's on Waddles Road, and to further explore traffic issues on Waddles Road at the Crooks Road intersection.
Do we have a second?
I will second the motion.
Okay, Mr. Hudson. Any discussion before the vote? Okay, Ms. Sarnicki, vote please.
Mr. Grant?
Yes.
I would just, Mr. Grant, yeah, I just want to say I agree with the moving of the drive. I do not think the building massing, whether it's one building or two, is going to make a difference. And I don't find it objectionable in that position. But again, my concern would be the drive and the location of the drive to the 7-Eleven drive.
Thank you. Okay, now we're going to have a vote. Ms. Sarnicki?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Lambert?
Yes.
Ms. Parakis?
Yes.
Mr. Rahman?
Yes.
Mr. Chagel?
Yes.
Mr. Abhidian?
Yes.
Ms. Cruz?
Yes.
Mr. Faison?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing your application to the city. It's my estimation. It sounds like an excellent project. I think it needs some tweaking though. Okay, we're going to move on to the next item, which is preliminary site plan review, the Regency of Troy, file number SP-JPL N 2020-0011, proposed Regency of Troy Convalescent Center / Nursing Home, southeast corner of Maple and Axtell. That's at 2785 West Maple, Section 32, currently zoned IB, Integrated Industrial and Business District. So who's going to give the city, Mr. Carlisle?
I will be resigning, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Tonight before you is a proposed development called the Regency of Troy. The planning commission should be very well familiar with this site. This is actually the third site plan that the planning commission has recently looked at for this site. It's at the corner of Maple and Axtell, and the applicant is proposing a convalescent / nursing home for this location. It's 6.1 acres in total. The applicant is proposing to develop. The site in total is a little over 8 acres. The two remaining, the 2 acres are remaining as future outlots for the development. Those are located adjacent to Maple Road. So Maple Road is in this location. These two, about 1 acre parcels each, are going to be proposed for future development that will come in for a future site plan at a later date. in the proposed building of the convalescent / nursing home is located in this portion of the site. It's a 3-story facility. It includes 118 rooms and 158 beds. The previous approval was granted by the Planning Commission in 2017. If you'll notice, again, this is Maple. The building itself takes up the entire site. So they shrunk the size of the building, reduced the amount of beds, and allowed 2 more acres for future development. That proposal that was approved in 2017 included 244 beds, which included 152 for skilled nursing and 87 for assisted living. The site plan is in front of you. Maple Road is in this location. It's on the left-hand side of the site. Access to the site will be the primary point will be 1 point off of Maple Road, and then a secondary access point off of Axtell. Based on the requirements of the engineering department review, the applicant is proposing to approve Axtell at where it meets up with Maple Road. It does meet all the requirements of the IB Industrial District bulk requirements, and it did receive a sustainable design option to park in the front yard. So this parking in this location received an SDO approval. Parking for this use is based on a combination of employment and beds. Based on that combination, they are required to provide 157 beds. The applicant notes that based on their experience, they find that 145 beds is sufficient. We do note that if the Planning Commission, based on the applicant's explanation, finds that 145 spaces is sufficient, what the Planning Commission may want to consider doing is requiring the applicant to land bank the remaining 12 spaces, and there is enough area on the site to land bank those 12 spaces. Essentially what a land banking is the applicant shows where he could put those 12 spaces on the site plan, but doesn't build them at that time. If parking does become an issue, the applicant can then install those 12 spaces in the future without having coming back to the Planning Commission for any future approvals. So we find that would be an appropriate solution to address the parking situation. With regards to landscaping, the applicant has submitted a very robust landscape plan, meets the ordinance requirements. Based on tree removal, they are providing 19 3-inch trees on the site for additional mitigation. This is the building in context with the surrounding area. Again, Maple Road is located on the left-hand side, Axtell on the southern end, I'm sorry, on the lower bottom end of the rendering, parking lot, and the building in context. Elevations were submitted. The color scheme is a mix of light gray, dark gray, and beige. We do note that the significant material use is EIFS siding with a stone veneer accent. So all of these panel type elements are all proposed as EIFS siding. This is just another view, another size of the elevation. We expressed a concern about the use of EIFS. Again, the Planning Commission has allowed it as an accent material, but not as a primary material. So we have asked the applicant to consider an alternative use for that particular material. So we are recommending that the Planning Commission discuss 2 items. The first is the parking reduction and the ability to allow the applicant to land bank those spaces, as well as consideration of the elevations and the inclusion of the EIFS material. Based on that discussion, we are recommending preliminary approval with the caveat that the applicant provide the 12 land bank spaces and make changes to the elevation material use based on the direction from the Planning Commission. I will stop sharing and open for any questions.
Okay. We'd like to hear next from the commission. Any questions for Mr. Carlisle or Mr. Savadat? John, you want to?
Froze, Mr. Krant, but I have a question.
Sure.
Yeah, there it is. Ben, have you seen samples of this proposed drive-it or EIFS system?
No, I have not.
I think it would be important, just looking at the packet, excuse me, of what the manufacturer's data is claiming as far as the finish of this system. It's a newer finish. It's not the more traditional textured or plaster looking finish, but I think it would be appropriate to get or samples of this to take a look at and see if it does give you more of the feeling of a metal panel, which is what
Mr. Tagle, I will say that this is the second time I believe we reviewed this, second or third time.
Seeing in their literature as opposed to the textural plaster finish.
Okay. Is there a way to have us actually see the real material? Because to have that much EFS up there, I think is going to be a bit of a stopping point for approval without some, seeing what this, if this is a new and better improved EFS. I think it's going to be a tough one to pass without seeing physical samples.
Mr. Cranton, Ian Anderson is the project architect, and he's participating in this meeting this evening.
Okay, Ian, is there a way for us to view independently? I realize we can't all mass into your office or whatever to see it. And is there a supply house nearby or a showroom that we could look at this material? Ian, for some reason, your sound is not working. Your mic is on, it says, but.
My apologies. I had it.
There you go.
I had it double muted on my phone and the system. Sorry for that. So as it turns out, if initially we had submitted, if you'll bear with me, I'll provide a brief history here. We initially submitted the application with a panelized fiber cement board system over the bulk of the building with a more standard EFS as an accent. During value engineering process in the building, it was determined that system was more expensive than anticipated, and so we had this more modern EFS system priced out by the general contractor. As it turns out, it's just as expensive as the fiber cement panelized system, which may explain why it looks so nice. And so if it's going to be a major point of concern for the Planning Commission, we would actually respectfully withdraw the request to change the exterior material from fiber cement panel to the more modern EFS system. We would still like to maintain a more traditional painted EFS system at some of the trim areas as indicated on the exterior elevations.
Very good. I think there's a little sigh of relief among people. Okay, Mr. Tagle.
I'm not sure if I understood the two systems, the panel system and the EFS system are the same cost. Is that what?
Correct.
Mr. Anderson? Yeah, okay. And which one would you propose?
So we are actually requesting that we go back to the original proposal, which is the panelized fiber cement system. It's a rain screen system.
All right. Thank you.
Any other comments for the applicant? Go ahead, Mr. Rahman.
So this is from energy efficiency standpoint. My question is there any effort or any measure taken to make the building, it's a commercial building, energy efficient?
Not a great deal beyond what is required by code. We do of course have energy recovery systems on the mechanical system, and we've got continuous insulation on the building as opposed to just standard bat insulation. So there are a number of measures put in place to make it more energy efficient, but we're not pursuing.
In your next time when I assume you are going to submit that, right, next time with some change in the. So can you
submit what? I'm sorry.
Yeah, my assumption is this project will be resubmitted, right, for our evaluation. Is that right? with the change in the EFS material?
Well, I can't answer that question. I think Brent or Ben may need to, because the submitted material right now actually calls out, the drawings actually call out the fiber cement panel. The request for a change to EFS was in a follow-up application packet submitted to Ben and Brent. So if it would please the commission to proceed with the drawings as submitted, that would be our preference. If there's a resubmission needed, of course, we're happy to do so.
So what I was going to say is if we can list like what are the initiatives taken to make the building energy efficient, if you could just list like the insulation, you mentioned a couple of them. Just want to know that there is some effort going on with the new building, especially when it's a commercial building.
Sure. Yeah. So, and just to be quite frank, I'm not prepared with a list. So I'm going to do my best to recite the measures from memory. So I did mention heat recovery unit on the mechanical system, and in fact, we're in the process of revising the current MEP design to better address COVID-19 concerns, because it is a skilled nursing facility. And so currently there's a heat recovery wheel, which is a very effective measure in saving energy, but we're looking at a different system that is both more efficient and better at preventing cross-contamination between air intake and exhaust air in order to cut down on viral infection in the airstream. I mentioned continuous insulation. We've got double glazed windows, certainly enough to bring plenty of light into the building, but not of an excessive size to create a lot of heat during the summer months or heat loss during the winter months. And all the light fixtures in the building are LED, 100%. And apologize if I'm struggling. I think that's kind of the largest items off the top of my head.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
We got a hand up from Mr. Tago.
I just want to be respectful, but the energy code that's a process during the building permitting will fully cover whether this building meets the standards of the ASHRAE energy code. What Mr. Anderson said was, very complete, left off the roof, but I know the insulation on the roof will be adequate to meet the code. So, or I assume it will be. So again, I just want to make sure that we focus on stuff that's in the plan and it's in the zoning ordinance and not leaning into the building department's purview.
Okay. Any other comments for the applicant? Well, moving right along.
Sorry, Mr. Crank. Can I, Mr. Anderson, could I just ask one last question about the siding? I personally really like the siding. I don't know if I missed it, and maybe Mr. Savadan, I don't know if it's all in there, but are we right now voting on the fiber cement board or the other one that was that people were questioning? To me, they're the same in terms of the look, and I don't have any issue with either of them. But which one are you preferring and proposing tonight?
Well, the owner would prefer the EFS, although to be frank, the metallic looking one is considerably more expensive than the fiber cement board. So they would not want to proceed with that. But I provided two alternatives, the metallic looking panelized EFS system and the just smooth panelized EFS system. And so they would prefer the smooth panelized EFS system over the fiber cement system, if for no other reason than it's lower maintenance over the life of the building. the fiber cement product, although if installed properly, won't require painting for quite a few years in between. It still will need to be painted on some sort of increment.
Any other thoughts or comments before we bring it back to the commission for resolution and discussion? Okay, so we're up at that point where we'd like to put forth a resolution on this item. Who would like to do that? Well, it's pretty quiet over here. Yeah. Do I have to just pick somebody? Who wants to be brave? We need a resolution so we can move forward. Go ahead, Mr. Tagle.
Give me just a second. I've got to get to it.
Yeah. I think it's not page number 61.
Right, yeah. Okay. Before I read the resolution, I thought I understood, and I want to make sure I'm clear. The drawings have been submitted with the cement fiber panels, and that's what's in the documents, and that's what we're voting on. Is that correct?
Mr. Savidan can answer that.
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay, thanks. All right. Resolved that the Planning Commission approves 12 land banked off-street parking spaces as per section 13.06 F2E. Be it further resolved that 12 land banked off-street parking spaces shall be constructed if there is demonstrated need for the parking spaces as determined by the zoning administrator. Be it finally resolved that preliminary site plan approval pursuant to Article 8 of the zoning ordinance as requested for the proposed Regency of Troy Convalescent Center Nursing Home located on the southeast corner of Maple and Expo, 2785 West Maple, Section 32, currently zoned IV, Integrated Industrial and Business District, be granted.
Do we have a second? Mr. Rahman seconds it.
I'll second.
Any discussion before the vote? Ms. Sarnicki, do we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Lambert,
Yes.
Ms. Parakis,
Yes.
Mr. Rahman,
Yes.
Mr. Tagle, Mr. Aphidian,
Yes.
Ms. Cruz,
Yes.
Mr. Faison,
Yes.
Mr. Hudson,
Yes.
Mr. Krent.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Well, thank you for bringing your project to the city, and best of luck on your completion of this project.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Next item on our agenda is the City of Troy Master Plan Amendment. Ben, are you going to take that one, or is Brent?
I think we're going to tag team. This. So obviously we have a City of Troy Master Plan. It was originally comprehensively rewritten in 2008, and then we made the determination that it needed to be amended. So we amended it in 2016. The Michigan Municipal Planning Act requires that communities make a finding at least every 5 years whether their master plan is still valid And if it needs to be revised, then it should be revised. So as I indicated earlier, we've had some dialogue internally at a joint meeting in April with City Council, where we made the determination that we should start looking at a couple of things in the master plan specific to the neighborhood node. So that's going to be something that one of the things we're going to focus on. But we asked Ben's firm, Carlisle Workman Associates, to give us a proposal to assist the city in updating our master plan. And he did that, and the proposal's attached. So what we're asking the Planning Commission to do, and we can do it tonight, or if you want to postpone and have time to think about it and review it, we can do that as well. But we're asking for support from the Planning Commission to move forward with an update of the City of Troy master plan. The process, as outlined in the master plan, would start in the early spring, late winter, early spring, February, and we proceed with the process. And Ben, I think Ben put together a couple of slides to lead some discussion tonight.
I did, but I think it's just, I think we can just, if it's okay with the commission, just talk about it. I think and I laid out a memo for the Planning Commission to consider. We do, for the most part, think the master plan's in really good shape. It was last comprehensively done over 10 years ago, but it's been updated since that period. So we've got a really good foundation to build on. But lots happened in those 10 years. We've gone through one, potentially two recessions. We're going through a pandemic now. So a lot of things have changed over the last 10 to 12 years. So there's 8 things that we think that the plan should really look at and focus on. The first is the format and layout. Done in 2008, was the first major comprehensive update in 40 years. So to give it a more fresh look, we'd just like to update the format and layout. So that's more graphical and not that substantive. We think there needs to be a strengthening between the connection between the zoning ordinance and the master plan itself, because there's a lot of there's going to be some confusion there. The introduction needs to talk about that relationship. The third focus, and probably perhaps the most important with regards to process, is we think there needs to be a much more robust community input and engagement strategy as part of this rewrite to get more public input into the plan. The fourth is we would update the demographics and data. This would include the updates based on the 2020 census, which should be rolling out shortly, and definitely into 2021 when we start this. We will spend some time looking at planning responses to COVID. I'll be honest, we really don't know what that's going to be at this point, but I think we should have some more clarity in the next 6 months to a year in terms of how we can plan as a community to deal with pandemics and how the pandemic is affecting communities from a land use and other standpoint. And the most important thing that we think we need to spend time on is the neighborhood node subplans. Basically, the Planning Commission, we felt it tonight, we have been struggling, the Planning Commission is struggling, and the council has been struggling with regards to what the future of these nodes are and really what the intent is. So we would really like to do a deep dive, go almost node by node with input to talk to residents in the surrounding area about what their vision is for that node in their particular area. So our engagement strategy actually does kind of a review of node by node as we go through the process. Based on those changes, we would make updates to the land use map accordingly. And then lastly, we would update and give a much more detailed implementation strategy so that the Planning Commission as well as the city can go almost year by year, point by point to make these changes possible. I noted engagement. It's a really interesting time to be doing engagement right now. We're doing master plan. I'm personally involved in 2 master plan updates right now. Our firm is involved in, I think, around 5 to 10 right now. All of us are using virtual engagement. Many of the communities started it pre-COVID and didn't want to stop the momentum going through, and so we've kind of had to revamp how we've done it. I think it's been I would say almost very successful. many more people are actually able to participate this way than they would be coming to a traditional open house or public meeting, etc. That doesn't mean though that, so we gave a pretty robust engagement strategy that's virtual, including surveys, small group, focus groups, webinars, workshop presentation and discussion for the nodes, as well as feedback options virtually. That doesn't mean that if things get better in 6 months or 9 months when we're in the drafting or engagement process that we can't bring back more traditional means by bringing people to meetings and open houses and all that sort of thing. But this is written as if we're going to be doing this virtually for the foreseeable future. So again, we can kind of change our approach to engagement based on the conditions, but we think this is a good way to do it right now, and actually a way we've been getting good feedback. And lastly, I'll leave it as Director Sawadan noted. Our goal is to start February, March, sometime in that period, and take 6 to 9 months to go through the whole process. We don't want to rush it, but we certainly want to make sure that we get have a closing date in mind with this. So as Director Sawadan noted, we don't need necessarily a resolution tonight on this, but we're looking for some direction from the Planning Commission, and eventually this will go to City Council for their consideration. So I'll stop with that.
And community engagement, you know, I'm sure many of you have heard when we have some meetings, particularly regarding the nodes, where we talk about the master plan process from 2008 and then the amendment in 2016, and people say, well, no one told me. You know, that's all well and good, but no one told me. And, you know, I struggle with that because I think there's an obligation on when you're a resident of a community to be informed about the community's master plan and to be involved. But quite frankly, when that doesn't involve development in someone's backyard, you know, why bother? The master plan is arguably the second most important document of the city after the annual budget. It's a very important document, and people should get involved. So it's one of the things we're going to try to do is have robust community engagement. And if anyone has any ideas for ways to get people involved or to engage people differently, you know, we're open. We're open to hearing them, and maybe we don't have to discuss them tonight. But to think about it, we're open to innovative ways of trying to connect with people and trying to get people engaged and trying to get people involved and contributing. Because you know, I'm getting tired of hearing people say, "Well, no one told me," you know, 12 years ago. Well, let's try to creatively connect with people and get people involved, so we can have a document that accurately reflects what we want Troy to be in the future.
Brent?
Karen?
Listening to you reminded me that I'm the president of my neighborhood subdivision association. I've mentioned that once or twice. It is a life position, so I'm still doing it. My point is, I know that the city has on a couple of occasions put together a larger group of all of the people that represent the neighborhood subdivisions. And so, you know, if I had to come up with an idea, I would say perhaps use that network that's already in place and use those people who are already, you know, touching the people living in the neighborhood to help you. Get the word out, do a survey monkey. I mean, I don't know, something, but it seems to me you have a built-in network in that information.
Yeah, that's good. That's good input. That's thinking outside the box. I mean, there's other, you know, some people, for some groups, a place of worship is a good way to connect with people, and I think there's maybe a menu of different approaches we can use. I mean, it's got to be manageable and it's got to be effective. But again, we're open to suggestions, and you know, if you want to talk about it tonight, we can. If you want to postpone this item and think about it for a couple of weeks and come back and talk about it, we can do that too.
Mr. Faison.
Hey, Brent. Yeah, I had a question for Ben. Brian, I agree with everything you said. I think Karen, that's a great idea. And for Ben, I'm just wondering, I'm asking you because obviously you see more of these, your firm goes through this process more. How does Troy stack up in that aspect of communication versus maybe other cities that you're working with? You know, it feels like we've made the effort, right, to communicate and the outreach, and then, you know, it's a challenge, right, to get people to participate until they have a vested interest in a project, and then obviously it's too late.
So I'll answer that in two parts. The first part is, I think Troy, and I think it's been more recent, not just under the current city manager, but even the manager before that has done a better job of trying to reach out to citizens with city, and it's not just with regards to master planning or planning, it's everything else going on. There's a dedicated position to doing more of that, as well through social media and other means. So I think Troy does a great job of that. I will say that Troy has a lot more resources than a lot of the communities we work for, but they do an excellent job with the resources they have. Where Troy is not unique, though, is it's very difficult to get people involved with planning and or zoning development issues unless literally it's in their backyard. So Troy's not unique to that. That's common through all the communities they work in. But that being said, it's my job, it's Brent's job, it's the rest of the city's job, at least to, if people don't participate, that's one thing, but at least have the opportunity. It's our job to make sure there is an opportunity for them to participate. And so I can tell you that we will try our best to not beat down doors, because we can't do that. We'll get arrested right now for doing that, but try to beat the bushes to get people aware of this process. And I think there is a lot of already built-in resources that we can leverage. And I think Karen raises a good point. But there's a whole social media platform that we never had before doing this. And so I think this dovetails well with already what the city's doing. So I think there's a good opportunity to get a lot more people engaged.
Go ahead, Brent. Go ahead, Brent.
Well, I think as a community, in terms of communication, we do an okay job. I think there's significant room for improvement. I think we underutilize our resources. There's an opportunity to take more advantage of social media and to be more creative. And we recognize that. I think people above me in the organization recognize that we could be better. And we've talked about bringing on another member of the planning department to assist us. One of the roles that person would have would be being more involved in engagement. But I think there's dialogue right now ongoing with the potential of creating a position just solely to focus on engaging with the community. It's very, very important in 2020 that we be more innovative and we reach out to people and we listen more. And we need to do a better job of it. And I think that this master plan is an opportunity for us to learn and to be better, because I think we need to be better. And I think Carlisle Wortman has done a good job of holding meetings and continuing to work with communities through COVID and engage them remotely. It can be challenging, but the city of Troy was involved in an engagement process for the library millage, where they did a significant amount of engagement with the public remotely, and it was very, very effective, very, very effective. So, I mean, there's people internally that can help us at that end, but I mean, I think there's significant work to be done in terms of how we conduct business, and this is an opportunity for us to be better. Just working on this master plan, and I look forward to doing that.
I just want to add one thing, and then I'll stop talking because I know it's late. Carlton, just so the planning commission is aware, engagement strategies have changed significantly over the last, I'd say, even 10 years. Before 10 years ago, we would spend maybe 10-20% of our budget on engagement, and then we would basically just write the plan and do what we thought professionally was the best thing. It's changed. I would say we spend almost 50% of our budget on engagement alone. And that's the most expensive. It's labor and time intensive and expensive to do engagement. And so, but it's necessary. It's important. So even the shift in engagement and the importance has changed significantly over the last 10 years. That we never never ever did this much engagement. We had maybe one meeting at the beginning and one meeting at the end and say, what do you think? And it's much different now.
Okay. Who else?
I have a question to Ben. Do you want to go first? Mr. Savidan, do you want to go first?
I'll be quick. One of the crazy ideas I had was since one of the focuses is going to be nodes, and the nodes obviously have geographic locations and intersections, is maybe we through hashtags, through social media, we come up with a branding name for like some type of a pop-up meeting. We create like some type of a physical thing, like a tent or something that bright colors, that joy colors, and we advertise like, hey, we're at this date at this time, we're gonna have a pop-up meeting, and we want to get impromptu people, people who are conducting business there or they live there to come and engage and have like one-on-one interactions, kind of informal, and just as a creative way to create buzz, but to also get kind of real, authentic engagement with people. Now we've got this COVID pandemic thing we have to deal with as well. So there's still the unknown, but I mean, things like that are just different ways of getting the word out, listening to people, giving people an opportunity to contribute in different ways. And maybe we need to talk to people younger than us, people who maybe we need to talk to high schoolers and get their feedback. But I mean, innovative, different ways that are effective, that are within budget, and can just get us connecting with people.
I'm going to butt in just for a second before I pass it on. What you hit on, Brent, is actually turned a light on in my head. Go through the school systems with kids. I'm involved with something called Future City. It's a national competition. They hold the finals in Washington, D.C. The point is, I've seen so many great solutions. This is mostly middle school age kids. Great solutions for city planning that if we engage with the middle schools and high schools, I think we can get the parents engaged because the kids are going to be making projects and things. So I'm just thinking that is another avenue to get attention.
That's an excellent idea, Mr. Grant. I just want to ask a question to Mr. Carlisle. I know you guys are doing a lot of this kind of supporting master plan development. Do you have benchmarking of similar cities or maybe like futuristic cities where it's where we look up to, so that we can take a look at it, the breadth and width of the subject matter? I know we are kind of stuck with neighborhood node, and I don't want to have the whole master plan discussion is with neighborhood node. We should look up we should be thinking about what we should do for our empty nesters, the green mission that we have to have. So I just want to see what other cities are doing, and then that way we can have our discussion with different items, and then we can engage people to have people to discuss different items at different time. So my point is, do you have any benchmarking study?
I'm not sure. Not sure we have benchmarks. We certainly take best practices from other communities and apply them and share them. But I'm not sure we actually have. I don't know if benchmarks is the right
Can
term.
you do some studies on that? Like what happened in one of the top cities in California, right? Like a technologically advanced city, what they do in their master plan. Can we spend some time looking at, and then we can select as a team like a couple of cities. I don't want to make it like a Santa Clara, but at the same time, I want to I don't want to compare with another city which is not comparable, to our city. So that's what I'm saying.
Yes, we certainly can do that. I'll just be frank with you, is that wasn't part of our scope, and if that's something that the Planning Commission City wants us to do, we can certainly do it. It may require us to change parts of our scope and increase it in some way. But that's certainly something, if the city desires, that's certainly something that we can do. That being said, though, when we look at the nodes and the other factors, we do look at comparable cities with regards to those issues that we're focusing on. But if you're asking, should we look at other issues such as green infrastructure, energy, perhaps energy, that wasn't part of one of the focuses we noted in our scope, we certainly can add that. But I guess I would kind of lean on direction from Director Savadan if that's something that.
I remember I have the master plan here. I can show you, and then and it has the energy efficiency chapter where we talk about it. So I just want to make sure that we execute it. Otherwise, it just stays in the book. At least we need to ask ourselves the question: are we trying to do something which is better than what we did like 5 years ago? At least have the discussion going.
Yep.
So I would love to have some some like bullet points from other cities, like they considered this, they did this for the old people, So then we can say, that, okay, no, we are not doing it, or we are doing it. Thank you.
Okay, Dave, you got your light on.
Yep. Mr. Carlisle, I think you guys did a great job on this. I appreciate all the work you put into it. One minor suggestion is on page 3, where it's under 2.1, you say you're going to send out postcards to people in Berkeley. You probably want to change that to Troy.
Oops. Yeah.
And then on a more important point, I'm glad you included the point in here about stormwaters, utilities, and green infrastructure. And I'm not sure if under seniors, if part of that will include looking at transportation and also designing and planning for walkability and health.
Very good. Mr. Hudson.
I'm just, my light's on. I'm sorry. I was just listening.
Your mic's on. Okay. Anyone else have a quick comment before we bring it to a resolution? My only thought is that the city of Troy did a great job. I'm just going to hold this up. This is the details about the Troy Library, compares us to other cities. The point is, a mailer, direct mailer is a good idea. It got my attention when it came in the mail. I read the thing. I rarely read a lot of political stuff, but this was well worth the read because it did show how we stack up with other neighboring cities for the library, and I thought it was well written and nicely presented too. Any other thoughts to help? Do we want to make a resolution tonight to have them go ahead with this? I mean, I don't see any reason why we can't do that. I mean, I'm sure most of us have hopefully read through these few pages. It didn't take that much to say, yeah, let's do it. Okay, you would like would someone out there like to just, is there a formal resolution printed, or yes, there is. Well, with all the whereases, huh? Okay, that's on 103, page 103. Who wants to read?
Mr. Chairman, do we have to read the whole thing, or can we just do the resolves?
Julie, what do you think? Can we just do a resolve on this?
Let's read the whole thing. I know it's late. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Dave.
All right. Whereas the Michigan Planning Enabling Act, Act 33 of 2008, grants the Planning Commission of a municipality the authority to prepare a master plan as a guide for land use and development. And whereas the Michigan Planning Enabling Act requires that at least every 5 years after adoption of a master plan, a planning commission shall review the master plan and determine whether to commence the procedure to amend the master plan or adopt a new master plan. And whereas the City of Troy master plan was last amended on August 22nd, 2016, the determination of whether to update the master plan or adopt a new master plan must be made prior to August 22 of 2021. And whereas the City of Troy has utilized the consulting services of Carlisle Wortman Associates, Inc. since 2001, and under this contract, Carlisle Wortman, Inc. has provided a range of planning services, including preparation and amendment of the City of Troy master plan. And whereas Carlisle Wortman Associates, Inc. prepared the master plan update proposal to assist the Planning Commission in amending the City of Troy master plan. The proposal includes a summary of proposed revisions, public engagement strategies, and project scope. And whereas the Planning Commission has determined that the City of Troy master plan should be amended as per the master plan update proposal, therefore, be it resolved, the Planning Commission recommends to City Council that the master plan update proposal prepared by Carlisle Wortman Associates, Inc. to assist the Planning Commission in amending the City of Troy master plan be approved. Be it finally resolved, the Planning Commission recommends that City Council authorize the commencement of the master plan amendment process.
Any comments before we take a vote? Then, Ms. Sarnicki, if we can have a vote, please. Or, I'm sorry, we've got a second first. Need a second.
I'll second it, Parakis.
Parakis seconds. Okay, now, Ms. Sarnicki.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Parakis,
Yes.
Mr. Rahman,
Yes.
Mr. Tagle, I did not hear you, Mr. Tagle. Yes. Okay. Mr. Abhidian,
Yes.
Ms. Cruz,
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Faison,
Yes.
Mr. Hudson,
Yes.
Mr. Krent,
Yes.
Mr. Lambert.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, now we're going to move on to the item number 9. It's the Planning Commission comment. Anyone have any comments of importance tonight? Go ahead, Dave.
Mr. Chairman, I know the meeting's getting late, but a question for Mr. Savidan. I know before the COVID quarantine occurred, Planning Commission had sent on to the City Council zoning text amendments, and I'm wondering if what's the plan as far as the Planning Department and City Management as far as when those will be brought up to City Council?
I don't have a firm date for you, Mr. Lambert. The challenge is how to hold an effective and fair public hearing with the challenges of COVID and restrictions placed on the ability to meet in person and also comply with state requirements. So it's a long-winded way of saying I don't know, unless Mrs. Dufresne had something to add.
No, I don't have anything to add. I think that's a decision that's going to be made between the city manager and Ms. Bloom as to when those will go forward for a public hearing.
Any other comments? Go ahead, Ms. Parakis.
Yeah, I'd just like to say it was really great being back. It's good to see everyone. I'm glad we're back to work. I think everybody knows my position on this, but I think that going forward, I'd like to see it happen sooner rather than later, that we start using our social media, the city's social media, to announce meetings, but not just do that, but to post the agendas on social media. So at least we put it out there and people actually know if it is in their backyard. I don't expect every Troy citizen to be interested in everything that comes up through the Planning Commission, but if it impacts their daily life, I do think they'll notice and they will participate. And so I think it's important, not just in redrafting the master plan, but also when these developments come up in the neighborhood nodes that impact our daily lives, that we do hear from the community so we have an idea of the direction that we want to be taken, especially since we're not going to be getting to this master plan revision until probably Crooks and Waddles is already going to be built up. That's my fear. So I'd at least like some public input on what's going on what people want, and it'll help guide us a little bit better. Thanks.
Okay, anyone else? Going once, twice? Anything from the staff? Then I'll call it adjourned.